For more on the impact on this between the U.S. and China trade relations, I spoke to Charles Freeman. He's the former assistant U.S. trade representative for China affairs. And I asked him about the impact of this latest action by China on polysilicon imports.
Well, I don't know who the winners are. I mean, there are some Chinese polysilicon producers that will benefit from it, and clearly there's huge oversupply in polysilicon as it is. So, that China can supply its own solar panel producers by itself with polysilicon. So there will be a few Chinese polysilicon providers that will be the winners. The losers will largely be
I don't heard from a lot of folks in the United States, and consumers would say, if China can make it cheaper and they can send it here, they can help me save energy, why are we not allowing that to happen? I think this is, from a business standpoint, I understand the rules and the fairness, but from a consumer standpoint, they're going to say, well, this is affecting not only my business, but also my ability to get clean energy for my house. I mean, what do you tell those individuals, or how do you begin to explain that to the consumers?
Well, consumers have not very much political power here in the United States, and absolutely, common sense dictates that if someone wants to sell you something cheap, you buy it from them. But I think by and large, the trade rules that were difficult for consumers to have a voice in it. There is no, large public interest process that factors into trade cases.
A trade dispute that they've been having for some time now. It doesn't seem to be resolved, and I don't know if there's going to be a middle ground, and so I'm hoping you can help us. What does a compromise or a middle ground look like that would ultimately benefit both sides?
Well, I mean, if you look at the overall industry, it's been enormously successful, and the bilateral trade between the U.S. and China has been tremendously successful. If you look at solar products writ large, whether that includes polysilicon, wafers, panels, everything else, it's actually, the U.S. has a trade surplus of close to $1 billion with China on a year-on-year basis. That gets closed down pretty dramatically as a result of the trade dispute. Both sides are trying to benefit their own industries, particularly the higher end, but the industry as a whole, including installers and the hundreds of thousands, are really hurt by this.
Why not? I mean, I'm going to reference back to Europe and China. I mean, they settled their solar panel, I should say, supply dispute that they had. Why not follow that model? Would that work in this particular case?
Well, that agreement, which was controversial in Europe, and particularly with one of the key companies in Europe that is actually the primary petitioner in the U.S., that actually complicated the work in the U.S. because it made it more difficult and got people to dig their heels in. Yes, absolutely, there's a possibility of a negotiated settlement that will require the petitioner to come to the table, and they don't seem to be willing to do that.
Any reaction you're expecting out of China from all of this? I mean, let's go with their next move, and then we'll talk about what the U.S. next move might be. But let's play a little. We'll try to speculate a bit. What would China do then next at this point?
I think China has already started engaging in the tit for tat, and by banning polysilicon to try to send a message back to the United States that there's a broader industry and a broader set of issues here. The challenge really becomes that for both countries is, does this spill over into other areas? In and of itself, the solar industry is not that significant. It's less than 0.5% of bilateral trade. But if it bleeds into other parts of the relationship, it can be quite unpleasant for both sides.
The rare earth case loss, how will that ultimately impact producers and exporters in China? And also, what could China do perhaps to revisit that case ultimately?
It's going to make it more difficult for them to manage the process of rare earth production. There has been a lot of rogue production, a lot of black market deals in rare earths. It's going to be more difficult for them to manage this. So what they're going to need to do is actually consolidate the industry and get the smaller producers under control. So I mean, it's a dirty, unfortunate process, and the U.S. shut down most of our production because of environmental concerns. So I think one has to be sympathetic with genuine Chinese interests in protecting the environment, but at the same time, it's difficult to block exports and not fall foul of trade rules.